Hello, beautiful people. This is another episode of Don't Be Afraid podcast. I remain your host, Jamila Oiza Muhammad Jamiu, and I have with me here
Halima Isa.
Tolu is missing. Nobody misses him anyway, but and our next guest is
Dr. Ogonnaya Ndupu.
Okay, so I'm going to be giving us a really brief bio of who our guest is. Dr. Ogonnaya Ndupu holds degrees from Unilag and the UK. She is the CEO, Medical Director of Lifecrest Medical Services and Hospital in Ikota Villa Estates. She's a consultant psychiatrist, behavioral medicine specialist at institutions including Lagoon Hospitals, Critical Rescue International, Vedic Life Care Hospital, Hospital for Trauma and Surgery, and Lifecrest Rehabilitation Center. Dr. Naya is a public speaker and an on-air personality for Mind Clinic with Dr. Naya on Inspiration 92.3 FM. She's a board member of the Behavioral Health Institute and has appeared on media platforms like Arise TV and channels. Her literary contributions include My Beautiful Mind series and Dust to Do by Betty Irabo. Oh my goodness, I have to clap.
Right.
At this point, because
That's so
my
impressive.
goodness, wow. It's so lovely to have you on our seat today, Ma. And I'm actually curious, what inspired you to get to where you are right now?
I think for me, it started with trying to have a deeper understanding of what mental health is.
Right?
Over time, I grew up knowing that mental health was highly stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
It's an aspect people don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got licensed as a medical doctor, and I just felt the need that, you know what, I wanted to know more about this mental health, how the brain works, what explains what we see. And that's why I went deeper into mental health.
Oh, thank you very much. And also thank you for gracing our seats today.
You're welcome.
So one of the topic that we'll be having for today is dangers of self-diagnosing. I honestly think it's really prevalent it's been that way, but I feel like it's much more, there's a lot going on with it right now. Could you give us an insight into,
Yeah, I agree with you that it has become more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And reasons being that this is the age of internet.
Yes.
And lots of people now have access to a device. And more importantly, I think as far back as 2020, with the advent of the pandemic,
Yeah.
it sent a lot of people searching.
Yeah.
And reasons also being that during that pandemic, things happened to a lot of people. Even when, yes, we can say that. And we have statistics to show that. And so then being under lockdown, you couldn't have access to
medical
health facility. You were left on your own to try and probe, to try and make sense of whatever your experiences are. Don't forget that we also discovered that during the pandemic, there was also almost like a pandemic of mental health issues.
Yeah.
Yes. People had stopped
Anxiety
work. People were more homebound, from relationship issues to lack of much social interaction. And people started coming down with all sorts, from anxiety to depression to what have you.
Yeah.
And so that even pushed them further to find a need to investigate themselves and find out really what's going on here, what is happening to me.
Right. When you spoke about the pandemic, there's because I know that any little thing that happens, any small cough, oh my God, is it COVID? And then you start searching, what should I take? What should I use? Some people go as far as taking garlic, ginger, and there are lots of diagnoses that people should take during that period, and it definitely does make sense. So what are some of the dangers of self-diagnosis?
I think we should start from what really is self-diagnosing.
Right.
Self-diagnosing is having to go to I'll call them alternative sources of information, to come to a conclusion on what may be happening to you.
Yeah.
Now, that term comes from the fact that what do we do as doctors? We make a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And what we need to understand is I, as a medical doctor, as a psychiatrist, I do not just sit in my bedroom and make a diagnosis. We make a diagnosis based on an assessment, a physical examination, laboratory investigations, if need be, to arrive at a diagnosis. So the same way when you go for a medical condition in a hospital and the doctor, after examining you, you may come in with a fever, but the doctor cannot just do a guesswork there. He feels they need to go further. You have verbally reported what is happening. He goes further to do a physical examination. And afterwards, he feels there's a need for a laboratory investigations. That's how we arrive at a diagnosis. So there's a compilation of several things. What has been reported by my patient, what I have observed from examination as a doctor, and what I can't observe physically, I send for laboratory investigations. Could it be radiological? It could be hematological. And we collate all that result. That's where they're able to say, oh, you have cancer. Oh, you have typhoid enteritis. You have this. You have meningitis. That's how we arrive at that. Now, when it comes to self, and the same thing applies in mental health also. Mental health may not do so much of
damage.
Yes, so much of physical examinations to establish. But I will explain much later how we arrive at our diagnosis. So when it comes to self-diagnosing, you find that individuals, they take it upon themselves to go online, to go to whatever form of available information there.
Yeah.
And then they pull together symptoms or sometimes presumed symptoms. And that's way they begin to label themselves a certain condition which they may not have.
And some people even think it's a personality quirk, oh my gosh, I have OCD, I'm so clean, I'm this, I'm that.
Yes, yes, I will come to that. So you see, I've explained the process on how, as medical doctors, we arrive at a diagnosis. You as a client, you understand. So if you walked into a place and a doctor was not running some investigation, you would ask questions. You will argue, how did you arrive at this? Based on this, based on that. We want to know more. Why you're not investigating me hematologically and say that. Now, when people go through the self-diagnosis route, it's done for several reasons. One, which I've talked about, there's a need for information. And then we also found out that people who go about to get self-diagnosis, it's like a getaway for them. They use it as labels, as excuse to attract people's sympathy, to excuse themselves from certain things. I will tell you what I know from experience.
We would love to hear that.
Yes, and then people come and they come to my consulting room and say, I have ADHD, and I'm looking at you as in, how old are you? I'm 27, I'm this, and I'm like, oh, you just suddenly realized you had ADHD. Oh, I find out that, they saw something on the social media, on TikTok, or this that prompted that. Younger people, I have depression. Because they're using that as an excuse for people to excuse them from certain responsibilities. And it helps them feel better. May not necessarily be the diagnosis. So when they do this, unfortunately, they may seem to be enjoying the advantages of doing this.
Yeah.
But I think on the long run, on the long term, there are more problems for them as regards self-diagnosis.
How so?
Because one is in several ways. One, the mind typically would make you a bit biased. You are not very objective. Jamila, if you were to meet Dr. Ndupu, I'm meeting you for the first time.
Yes.
And I owe it to you to be objective. I'm not related to you in any way. I want to objectively look at your symptoms, your presentation, and come up with a diagnosis. If you were to search for yourself, you probably go. You may be having experiences that you want to remain in denial. Take, for instance, you're hallucinating. You would skip that part. You would probably go to a lesser ill for you.
Yeah.
And then that may lead to a wrong diagnosis. A wrong diagnosis will lead to late at presentation. And so imagine something that you could have presented early. You have failed to present early. Or for some reason, you have downplayed the symptoms you're having. So we both know you hear voices, you're seeing strange things, but you choose not to go there. You would rather say, go to where anxiety is, this, that. Even if you deny the existence of this symptom, it is happening. That's one. Two, symptoms overlap. You see, we can't sit here, sincerely as a psychiatrist, I know that there are over 200, 250 recognized diagnoses, and there are so many. These conditions overlap. What that means is that you can't tell me that, Dr. Ndupu, I am depressed because I have been sad for 2 weeks. I know that depression could also present with poor concentration, memory loss. I've had people come to me and say I'm demented. And yes, true stories. And I look and I'm like seriously, why? I've been forgetful, and I begin to educate you. If you're forgetful at your age, I won't think of dementia. I will tell you that anxiety will be top on the list, depression followed before more severe illnesses. So because these illnesses overlap, they share some common symptoms. So if you're not a professional, you're likely to go the wrong route. You're likely to misdiagnose yourself. You understand?
Yes.
So those are some of the reasons why
Yeah.
it becomes a problem on the long run for them.
Yeah, you said you're going to tell us some stories on why people self-diagnose.
Yes. I was talking. I remember during COVID, I once saw a client who was referred to me. Why was that client referred? The client was referred to me because he had developed what we call electrolyte imbalance from water intoxication.
Water intoxication. How's that?
You overdose on water now.
Oh.
People overdose on
In
water.
quotes, intoxication. The
Oh,
same way
okay,
you say
okay.
alcohol intoxication.
Oh, okay.
So what happened? I remember that time CNN would tell you, when CNN was just doing the body counts during COVID on that lockdown.
Yeah.
On the screen where you go to CNN, you see how many have died, how many have this, how many have that. And this guy just kept watching the news, and suddenly he said he called a certain condition, I can't remember now, of the throat. I said it was a symptom of COVID, and that the solution to it, he had gone online, he's made a diagnosis all along, that the solution was water. He then started buying bottles of water in bags, drank, until he had to be admitted in another hospital because he had started manifesting some other physical illnesses. There are things we call in our body electrolytes. It has caused too much water into your system over a short time, had caused a derangement of those electrolytes. So now they started treating him for a physical condition. In the course of treating him, why will your electrolytes be imbalanced this way? They were able to get to the point that he had been intoxicating himself. Too much water, believing that water, this supposed diagnosis. And at the end, Dr. Naya was invited and said, you need to talk to this guy. This is where our problem is. And so we had to take him to therapy and start educating him. And one thing I said, can you please stay away from this internet? Can we just dish this phone right now? Because he just felt, and it took a while to convince him and said, wow, what did I do to myself? Because he genuinely thought, what doctors have examined. I had also come in and said, you do not have this condition. That's a drawback of self-diagnosis. Also, I have seen people more recently, I think earlier this year, I have seen more cases of people in their 20s presenting to me as cases of what looks like ADHD. ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
I think that's the one trending now. Everybody sort of.
It's still on, yes. So I then find that people are now presenting more. And so how do I know these things? They come to me as a doctor and say they want a prescription. I'm looking, because you can't do that yourself. They are controlled medications. They need an authorized person to write a prescription. So they come to me and say, I want a prescription. I say, based on what? They say, I have ADHD or the attention deficit type alone, not hyperactivity so much. And I begin to probe, and I find that somebody there's something going on online that people I'm not concentrating. So I find that I am doing a fresh diagnosis and say, you do not have ADHD. How come your parents never knew? How come you just popped out and you suddenly begin to have it? We know that these conditions can be traced back to early childhood, usually. And so I didn't find that a few of these people I have discovered that did not really have this condition. They had other things like anxiety. They even had, I saw somebody, 2 days ago, who had a virtual session with me, and I could establish that there was a mood problem that had presented as lack of concentration, forgetfulness. And I said, it's so easy for people to mislabel themselves and think these conditions are there when they are not there. So either you're overdiagnosing or you're underdiagnosing. Another drawback to that is, after you make a diagnosis for you, what next? Do you know that there are people who begin to look for medications to self-medicate?
Yeah.
Yes.
So in prevention, they don't have these things they say they have. What effect does that drug have on their health?
Adverse effect, of course. Adverse effect. There are some drugs Every drug, even your paracetamol, has a side effect.
Yeah.
Most people don't even want to think about that. So take, for instance, you diagnose yourself as having hyperactivity disorder, or the attention deficit type in adulthood, and then you begin to self-medicate. The treatment is usually a stimulant. We know the effect of a stimulant on the brain. So think about what happens to that person. So sometimes we just move from a place of treating a certain condition to a place of managing drug dependence, because you have moved from what they call from fire to fire. You have even got to the worst. Yes, that's what you have done. If you had probably sought professional help, the solution would have, a proper diagnosis would have been done. When we do a diagnosis, there is what we call differential diagnosis. You have a fever. At the back of my mind as a doctor, there are several things that could cause a fever depending on your age. If it was an elderly, a urinary infection. If it was a child, a respiratory infection. Before you come to things like malaria, pneumonia, what have you. Do you understand? So there's a list of things. When we say differential diagnosis, it means these are the possibilities. And for us, those possibilities, they are things that are top on the list. They are those below the list. It only takes a professional to know that. So when you do that as a layman, you can imagine what kind of job you're doing on yourself.
Yeah.
So are there success stories whereby, okay, I feel like that's if I have depression, and then I go online to check and I feel like I relate to this, and then I come to meet you and turns out that truly, yeah, what I have seen online and also met you turns out to be, it relates truly. Has there been any success story at all?
Yes, there have been. And I've seen quite a number. And I must emphasize here, I think in all honesty, I think the whole idea behind social media or internet or the use is more of giving direction. Hear me well, giving direction. So giving direction would mean that, oh, I feel a certain way. Yeah. It could be this, it could be this. Take, for instance, when it comes to mental health, it points you to where you should be going. In this part of the world, a lot of time we don't want to go my way. We would rather not go to the mental health. And so sometimes you may just think that, oh, what I have is just a medical condition. But sometimes when you go on for a search, it points to you that this could be a psychological issue. This could be a mental issue. This is the person you should be going to. So I have had to see a few people who actually went online. They saw this. And sometimes what they find online helps them. They're a bit relatable. So it gives you more information, aspects of your health you did not know about. Take, for instance, you just think that I've not been sleeping well. You go online and then you see that it's not just about not sleeping well. If you tell me as a doctor I don't sleep well or my sleep is poor, I want to know, what do we mean by poor sleep? Difficulty falling asleep is one type. Difficulty maintaining the sleep. Difficulty waking up too early. There are three different things I've said. So usually when you go online, sometimes they're a bit more specific. And so I've had people go online, find these things, and it points them to, oh, I saw it online, and they said, professional you should seek, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and that gives them direction to, rather than waste my time seeing a physician, this is the next level I need to go because my symptom explains that. One very common symptom I see is what we call somatization, where people say, I feel a certain purple sensation or tingling or crawling sensation around the head on my body. That's a symptom that most people can relate to, but most people have other explanations for that symptom. But professionals know that when you have a symptom like that, you should be talking to a psychiatrist. It's usually a psychological issue that seems to be manifesting as a physical illness. So I've seen people who had those symptoms and got direction from other sources like internet and said, yes, because I found this. I have seen people come into the hospital and say, I am requesting to see a psychiatrist. Not very often, but I ask, and I know that those people know what they're talking about. And they say, this is the specialist I need to see. And when you find that, they will tell you that I have found this online. This is the recommendation. So others can help me. I need to see a proper mental health doctor. So those are some of the success stories I can remember, and circumstances, how it has happened and how people sought help, which at the end of the day, they may be close. Very commonly, what have I seen? I've seen people who come with a vague idea of I have depression, and then they tell me that they suspect is clinical depression. There are like 6 types of depression.
Yeah. Financial depression.
Medically, no, not that one. Medically,
people get depressed when they don't have money.
I know, but when it comes medically, so everybody will just say, "Oh, I have clinical depression." For us, we are looking at: is it the mild? Is it the moderate? Is it the severe? Is it dysthymia? Is it is it unipolar depression? Is it the depression you see in bipolar? I've already called like 7 of them. So it's not so straightforward. We need to understand. Yes, we need to understand that. And then sometimes people just think that having depression is, I have a low mood, I haven't received an alert. It's deeper than that. And because we also know there's another type we call atypical depression. So don't think that depression will make you lose sleep. You may be sleeping excessively. Don't think that depression will make you lose appetite and lose weight. A type of depression will make you overeat and you will blow up, and people will say life is good. But in all sincerity, you have depression. Yes. And so what that type of the atypical depression just makes you eat, and people think
but
that
then
all is well.
That means that nobody, because we've had cases, we've read news whereby you hear this person died of depression and you're like, but this nigga was literally okay. He was fine. And then you just made mention of people would eat and then people would feel like, God, life is good on you. Yes. But they won't know. That means that they themselves won't also know that they have depression.
Yes, they may not know.
How?
It could present with anything. I've had people present with symptoms of depression as difficulty sleeping. I've had other people present as persistent, what we call fatigability. I'm always tired. I can't explain. I do not have energy. I'm tired. But very commonly, what do we see? People losing weight, people losing appetite, not being happy. But it's not every depressive case that looks like that. And so sometimes when you even go on internet, they're able to give you a bit of direction. And that's why there's a place for a mental health professional. Regardless, you need to just see someone who knows a lot more than you think you know regarding your health.
And even in some cases, like what you just said now, that person will be looking fine. And if that kind of person goes to talk to someone, I think I'm depressed, they'll be like, you're looking so fine. Well, how are you depressed?
Skin like milk.
Look at you, you're glowing, you're getting fatter, you're this, you're that. Yeah, people, and that would even make them be like, my own case is not worse. I mean, look at me, I'm looking good. So why
I'm healthy.
I'm healthy, so I don't think I'm depressed.
Maybe a lame person who is not so experienced. But if that person is a seasoned professional, they know depression. You may drive to the hospital with the best car there is. It doesn't eliminate you from having depression. I've seen people look so beautiful. I've seen people look better than I am, and I still say you have depression. So we are now arguing. The person is disagreeing, and I say everything is pointing to that, even though you do not accept. Yeah.
So how can they know? What are the signs to look out for?
For which one?
For depression.
Okay. So I will try not to get to the technicalities. Medicine is a bit technical and tricky. But let me tell you what I think every layman should know. There are cardinal signs of depression, one of which is a low mood. A low mood that has persisted for over 2 weeks. Persisted. Maybe off and on, but you can say significant part of the 2 weeks.
Key point on persisted, not low mood for a week or for one day.
Yes, persisted usually.
Low and not mood. Because you don't have money.
Yes, yes, not because of that. You may even have all the money you think you need, but you still feel that way. Another cardinal symptom is low energy. So usually when the low mood is there, there's a low energy. Remember a few minutes ago, I said explained something I called easy fatigability. I'm tired. I just don't know why I'm tired. I'm losing drive. That's a cardinal sign. A third sign is loss of interest. Not just loss of interest in previously pleasurable activities. For me, a pleasurable activity could be sex, could be food, but I have lost that interest. So it differs for individuals. So your pleasurable activity could have been watching movies, hanging out, and you no longer do them. That may be suggestive. Those are the 3 major cardinal signs of depression. However, you have other associated symptoms like the changes in appetite, changes in sleep, withdrawal to self, and what have you.
Right.
Okay,
So,
thank you
what
very
are
much.
some of the resources available to help people with, like you said, a layman might not even know what depression is, and they might not even understand what is going on. So, some people even downplay it and they'll even forget about it. So, are there resources to help people, like free resources, not like expensive ones free ones or affordable ones that an average
People can reach out
Nigerian
to.
can
Yes.
afford?
I would also go back to the onset of the COVID. A lot of organizations and small groups, they all came up. They are online. The same self-diagnosing you are doing online, use that as an opportunity to also reach out. There are groups that give these services and education for free. One thing I want to say when it comes to trying to search out a diagnosis and all that, maybe you as an individual should limit yourself to symptoms. There's something we call self-help. Self-help is not diagnosis. Self-help for us means that there's a symptom you're having, and then there are suggested ways you can help yourself out of it. Could it be anxiety? Could it be low mood? Take, for instance, what are the self-help? We encourage exercises. We encourage speaking to someone. That's really what going online to look up symptoms should look like. Self-help is different from self-diagnosis. You agree, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So self-help just give you basic tips on how you can help yourself deal with the symptom. And if you search proper sites, well, you will find that at the bottom of the self-help is where they say seek professional help. Have you noticed? Yes. If you go deep, you will find that after they have told you, eat healthy, do this, do that, then talk about the need. If your symptoms persist, please seek a professional help. That's how it should go.
Yeah.
So there are resources out there, people to give free counseling, people to give you direction on this is what you need to do. You may not, one thing that had limited people, they would tell me, oh, the cost. I said, okay, if you really can afford the cost, there are free services online. You just click a few things and you just see these resources available. There are people on the other end who are willing to help you.
Okay, before we round up, Ma, just give us, for our listeners, one advice. So advice for people that would want to self-diagnose online. Just a short advice for them.
Try not to.
Try not to is
Try
the word.
not to.
Try not
Stick to your symptoms and seek professional help. A stitch in time saves several, because if you are able to come for help early, it may not get as bad, unlike if you come much later, after you have wasted so much time and the symptoms have really gotten bad.
All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It's been so pleasurable having you here, and we've learned a
lot,
a great
a whole
deal
lot.
actually. And I hope that most of our listeners would also learn as well, and no be diagnosing online. No.
And I hope they take their mental health as serious as they take their physical health.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much. Ma.
Thank you for having
So
me.
we've come to the end of today's episode. Don't forget to follow us on our social media pages, DBA_podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.